Good morning, everybody. Chris Hoover here, coming to you live from the Going Further channel. Of course, I'm doing this clip in tribute to one of the most prolific and one of the most badass journalists and writers of the 20th century, Hunter S. Thompson. And if Hunter was here today, he would be pissed. He'd be up in arms and he'd be out on the streets rallying against this useless government of ours that is on strike, we'll call it, for the 39th day in a row. I mean, we all know what would happen to you and I, and when we don't show up to work, we get fired. So I say we stop voting for these idiots once and for all. We stop donating money to this bullshit slush fund that really just goes into their pockets, and we start a new government. How about that? And you can call me crazy, but it would be a better solution than what's going on right now. You know, Hunter was famous for many, many things. Two of his biggest accomplishments were the creation, the writing of the book Fear and Loathing Las Vegas, of course, and also gonzo journalism. To some of the younger followers out there, you might not be familiar with Hunter or gonzo journalism. He was a radical, outspoken son of a bitch, as he would call himself. And I'm going to quote here a couple things about Hunter. Back in 1969 or 1970, he was actually running for sheriff under the Freak Power Party. And, you know, Hunter put together a campaign to elect himself as sheriff. It combined aggressive radicalism, a higher level of organization than the previous Freak Power campaign, more controversy and danger, as well as some frivolous moments. His tentative platform set forth 6 points, including, I'm only going to read the first two. You'll get the idea. Rip up all streets with jackhammers and sod the streets at once. All public movement could be by foot and a fleet of bicycles maintained by the city police force. Change the name Aspen. This was Aspen, Colorado, of course, the ski town. Change the name Aspen by public referendum to Fat City. This would prevent greedheads, land rapers, and other human jackals from capitalizing on the name Aspen. These swine should be fucked, broken, and driven across the land. Wow, what an amazing person Hunter was, and what an outspoken maverick, spearhead for patriotism, for American pride, for peace, love, and happiness, for so many wonderful things that was going on back then. Hunter was also friends with one of my other favorite people of that era, which was Ken Kesey, of course. Ken was most famous for writing, being the author of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, but he was also famous for many other things. Specifically, he was the, shall we say, ringleader of the Merry Pranksters and the creator of the bus Further, which hence this channel is called Going Further. And I actually have a bus that I named Going Further. So anyway, all that being said, it's just a very, very sad state of affairs here in America today. I've been saying it for the past 10 years or more that the worst thing about America right now is the fact that we are so separated and not united as we once were. And of course, that's what our country was founded on, the United States of America. And so many people, including many of my friends, which all due respect, they slant to the further right or the further left. Pretty even mix, by the way, of my friends. And you know, I'll mention something as an example, and I don't think I'll just say his first name, Tom, would mind me saying this. He just got done reading my latest, greatest book called 2044, which, of course, is a summary of the past 50 years of my life. It's not an autobiography, but I do live vicariously through my main character. And it touches on such sensitive and controversial topics as 9/11, the COVID conspiracy that it was, of course, and now the encroachment of AI. Well, Tom actually read this book, and he just got done reading it a few days ago. And he gave me the highest accolades I could possibly imagine. In fact, I'm going to try to find this text as I'm reading, talking, rambling here to you, and read it out loud. He says, "Chris, what a great story 2044 is. Very reliable, as I am a retired, very relatable, excuse me, as I'm a 20-year fire department veteran of New York City. I'm a member who witnessed 9/11. The writing was such that I felt like I was in the main character's shoes throughout his journeys and trials and tribulations. A riveting eye-opener to some historical events, past and present. Attaboy, Chris Hoover, for a thoroughly enjoyable and eye-opening novel." So, thanks again, Tom. Here's an interesting thing. In my book, I state very specifically that I have never been political. In fact, I've never voted. I think I mentioned that in the book. I'm very proud to say that, because here's why. You look at the past, I'm going to say as an adult, I was 18 years old when Reagan was president. And it's fair to say, if we go back and we look, it doesn't matter right side leaning presidents or left side leaning presidents. They're all pawns of their lobbyist masters. That's all they are. They're talking heads. They're puppets. They sit up here and chirp, and they make promises to us every 4 years. Oh, we're going to do this, and we're going to do that. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Guess what? It's all bullshit. It's just them flapping their gums like a bunch of useless bastard. I don't know. I could call them anything, but they're just useless. They're scavengers. They're parasites is what they are. And they should be ashamed of themselves for being in office and not doing their jobs. I've actually investigated some of the other more, shall we say, technical things of this shutdown and what they are legally allowed to do and what they're not allowed to do and what we the people can do. And again, I'm just going to quote some piece that I found in reference to the Declaration of Independence this morning while doing some research. It reads, "The Declaration of Independence does, however, set forth the philosophical principle that if a government becomes destructive of the people's unalienable rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, over a long train of abuses and absorptions, it is the people's right and duty to alter or abolish it and to institute a new government. This speaks to a right of revolution in the face of persistent tyranny, not the temporary suspension of non-essential government services that occurs during a modern funding gap. Key points regarding the Declaration's relevant principles. Purpose of government. Governments are instituted among men to secure unalienable rights and derive their just powers from the consent of the governed. Right to revolution. The people have the right to change or overthrow a government that consistently fails to protect these rights and becomes despotic. Justification. This right is presented as an extreme measure only to be exercised after a long train of abuses to establish new guards for future security, as the American colonies did when separating from British rule. Hence, when we did separate from British rule, by the way, their slogan, those settlers, our forefathers' slogan was taxation without representation. Sounds pretty fucking current, doesn't it? Yeah, I'm pissed off. This government is, and it's not about Trump. You could say Biden, Obama, Clinton, Reagan, Bushes. They're all a bunch of bastards. They're a bunch of vultures that suck the infrastructure and the integrity right out of the core of America. And I, for one, am fed up with it. I don't know about you people out there. We need to take this republic back. We need to tell them enough is enough. We need to be out on the streets rallying. We need to stop voting. And yeah, we should stop paying taxes because taxes are paying their salaries and they're not doing their fucking job. And it's about time that they're taught a lesson by we the people. So that's about the independence part of the Declaration of Independence, of what it actually gives us, quote unquote, the philosophical rights to extend and, shall we say, execute against a corrupt government that's not doing its job. Meanwhile, I'm just going to touch on a few other very technical and very specific things that are equally disgusting. And this isn't just about Joe Biden. This is about every president that I can remember in my lifetime. They have this ongoing uh, facade of confidence that they are above the law and they are above the people and we are their slaves, which is completely untrue and a bunch of bullshit. But you look at the past, say, 8, 10 years, Nancy Pelosi, she as a speaker was making 174,000. Excuse me. As a speaker, she earned $223,500. I googled this, and she also was bringing in 174,000 annually as a member of Congress. Okay, so that's roughly 400 grand a year, which is ludicrous in itself for the lack of actual decency and integrity that she represented during her tenure. Well, meanwhile, in the midst of her, I'm going to say approximately 30-year tenure as a congresswoman and as an employee of We the People, her stocks went up over 2,000%. Her net worth went up over 2,000%. At the end of her tenure, she had accrued approximately $230 million, and this was due to specifically to the insider trading that she helped her husband with. Now, of course, this is slightly conjecture, and I'm not the first person to put it out there. And I'm certainly not worried about speaking my mind because this kind of bullshit needs to stop. But we have things like this going on, and of course, what happens is she was pardoned by Biden before he left office, and Biden also pardoned Fauci, and Biden also pardoned his son. And again, this is not against the right or the left. Obviously, Biden was for the left. This is just saying that every president, again, in the past 50 years, has pardoned his buddies, his golfing partners, his partners in crime, his co-conspiracists, like George Bush Jr., pardoned Cheney, and thankfully that bastard just died. And you know what's funny about that? I Googled, well, I didn't Google, it came up on my, in my algorithm on YouTube the other day a couple times. And of course, I left my own comment about the thanks that he is no longer here on this earth committing atrocities against humankind. But you know what else was really interesting about the commentary on Cheney's passing? 95% of the comments that were in the notes were all very derogatory, very hateful. And certainly, typically, I'm not a hateful person. I usually promote peace and love and happiness, and I mean that. But most of the people mentioned the war crimes that he committed against the United States of America, both as one of the co-conspiracists that pulled off 9/11, and also as the acting vice president of the United States, who was also the CEO of Halliburton for approximately a year or a year and a half into his vice presidency tenure. And meanwhile, as the CEO of Halliburton, his company was being awarded hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars of no bid contracts by the United States government. Now, you tell me about a conflict of interest. You talk about insider trading, insider favoritism, being above the law. I mean, this shit just has to stop. I'm pissed off. And I'm sure Hunter's rolling around in his grave right now. And cheers to you, Hunter. If you're out there watching over me, I'm doing my best to carry your torch. And I mean that as humbly as I can possibly say it. We have to stand up and take this country back before it's too late. This is not about the Proud Boys or Antifa. They are both paid for by the deep state. They keep us bickering like this, like on a seesaw. And that's really where I was going with what Tom mentioned after we were talking about the book. That, I'm a fan of everybody's right to be whatever they are politically, right, left, polka dot, whatever you are. That's cool with me. But he happens to lean to the right. And we got pretty deep down the Charlie Kirk rabbit hole, and I don't want to get too sidetracked on that. But it's just interesting to me that people that appreciate an intellectually very deeply researched book that is non-biased, okay, not in the least, meaning the partisanship does not exist in this book at all, that they still somehow fall victim of the propaganda of the right or the left. And the moment that people stop watching their TVs and the mainstream bullshit news that CNN and Fox and MSNBC and ABC and CBS, and I'm probably forgetting a couple, but those are the main ones, are constantly bombarding us with, is the moment they will see the real truth, the real feeble old man that's behind the curtains, which is the deep state, that's laughing all the way to the bank by keeping this propaganda machine running and brainwashing the masses with this hate. And if people weren't so fixated on this hate, they wouldn't be out on the streets rallying against ICE or Palestine or Israel or any of these, what I would call ancillary topics of America's future. The main future is the fact that we have a bunch of lame ducks running this country into the ground on their 39th day of doing nothing. And meanwhile, I'll mention one other thing. There are millions of people that rely on SNAP benefits who, of course, are dying as we speak. And do you think this president has an iota of compassion or humility for these people? No, he's basically going out of his way to keep them suffering and dying. It's an atrocity, and this bullshit needs to stop. Chris Hoover signing off with the Going Further channel. Please hit that subscribe button and that like button and click on that Patreon button. I'll see you guys on the flip side.